Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. A lot of little things to cover here that haven't done a news update video in a little bit. But some of it is quite interesting, especially towards the end. But we're going to start off here on Penguin Random House, and we have this kind of surprise announcement here. Legend of Korra, The Art of the Animated Series, Book 1, of course the Book 1 Air art book, is going to be getting a second edition. Now, you may think, what, they're releasing it with new content? From what the description says, which you can see here, reprinted just in time for the anniversary of the series that stole our heart. And then if you look down at the details here, 144 pages, that's the exact same length as the original release of the book. So I do believe this is just a reprint. And until they say specifically if there is anything different about it, that's the way I am treating this. They are just making an announcement out of the fact that they will be reprinting some of these more collectible books that aren't as readily available. I've already had a few people mention to me that hopefully this means that they're reprinting the other art book, because especially the Book 4 art book is kind of hard to come by. The only other thing that's worth mentioning here is the price, $39.99. That is $5 more than the original version of this book, which has the retail price of $34.99. So they're charging much more for this one, $5 more, and especially given that this is the shortest Korra art book. It's the only one of the four that's 144 pages. All the other three, Book 2, Book 3, and Book 4, are 184 pages. So that is relatively notable. So again, it's maybe one to keep an eye out on just to see if they do announce if there is anything new. But I doubt it. I'd be very surprised if there was anything particularly new in this. I think it is just they're more announcing this reprint as news than anything. So yeah, there's not too much on this. It just means that, okay, they're doing the omnibus editions as a way to re-release the comics. Now they're re-releasing the art books. They're just trying to get a lot of their Avatar and Korra stuff out there again, given that there's going to be a lot of kind of hype and interest in both series, given that it's the anniversary year of the franchise. Next up is this. I probably should have covered this a week or two ago when I actually found out about it. But yeah, Avatar The Last Airbender, The Shadow of Kyoshi, the second Kyoshi novel, is going to be getting an exclusive edition. Now, the Kyoshi novel got an exclusive edition, but it ended up not being too much of a big deal, because the main thing was that it kind of had a fairly basic map of the general area. So it was kind of okay, cool to see that people have it, but I don't mind that my copy of the book doesn't have it necessarily. It's not the most detailed map, but it would have been nice to have. Now we know there is going to be an exclusive edition of The Shadow of Kyoshi, and if you look in the description down here, it says, this exclusive edition includes 8 additional pages of original art featuring several of the characters from the novel, along with commentary from the author. Now that to me is stuff that I would prefer to just be in the actual version of the book. Everyone with The Rise of Kyoshi was basically crying out for, show us official character designs for the characters from this book, and now you're hiding them in an exclusive version that's only specific to a specific retailer. So I assume only people in America and Canada are going to have efficient access to this book. So it's going to be very tricky if anyone else wants to get their hands on this exclusive version of the book. So this is one of those things where obviously I hope anyone who does get this exclusive version does post those images online as soon as possible, because everyone wants to get a more visual look at these characters and so on. So obviously we have Kyoshi and Rangi on the cover, but it would be nice to get to see some of these other characters, depending on, of course, if they're in the book. So Yoon, of course, is probably the main one of the character who we want to get a look at to see what he's like, especially if he is sort of changed by spirits and so on. And then Lao Ji, or Lao Ge, whatever way you want to say him, Tigwai the Immortal, that would be a nice another one to have. And especially if a spirit is a notable character, that's another thing. And it's likely we'll meet stuff like maybe the Earth King and the Fire Lord in this. So there's options for characters, but yeah, that's that. Again, it's out the same day as the normal copy of the book, so that's something where if you have access to Barnes & Nobles, or if you just want to order the book online and you have access to it, you should probably try and get the exclusive edition so you can have the art of some of the characters. 8 pages of art as well, pretty impressive. Continuing on the Kyoshi side of things, the audiobook, obviously this was announced a while ago, but we had very little details on it. Now we actually have some details, including the fact that, as we suspected, there is going to be a audiobook for the Shadow of Kyoshi. But let's focus on the Rise of Kyoshi first. As you can see here, the main thing is that we actually have the narrator, narrated by Nancy Wu. So we didn't know that before, now we know it's going to be narrated by her. So again, I'm not overly familiar with her. I think she's an actress and she's starred in some of this stuff and she's done other books. So you know, that seems pretty interesting. It should be pretty good. 12.5 hours they're saying as the length, and the date continues to be May 5th, 2020. So that's only a few weeks away. I think this is very much snuck up on a lot of people. So you know, definitely, you know, keep an eye out for the fact that the audiobook is coming pretty quickly. Now, unfortunately, from what I can tell, it is obviously, as it says, they're exclusive to Audible, and it seems like it's exclusive to audible.com. At least it's not up on Audible UK. So it could be a little bit tricky if you're not from America to get a hold of the audiobook, but we'll see how it goes. There is a CD, audio CD available. It's on Amazon. It's I think it's like 9 CDs or something like that. So if you want to get the physical copy, you know, you can always get the audio CD as well. But yeah, that's what we know about that. And then I suppose the main thing with the Rise of the Shadow of Kyoshi audiobook is that they're listing the audiobook as being the same day as the book itself, which is definitely a cool thing, that they're going to have multiple formats for the book available. So it's obviously 21st of July 2020. They're not saying who it's narrated by, but I assume it probably will be Nancy Wu as well. I'd be surprised if they switched it, given that the 2 audiobooks are being released fairly close together, of course. So yeah, it's definitely very cool, because obviously in between both of these releases of the audiobooks is the paperback version of The Rise of Kyoshi is coming out in June as well. So that's pretty cool. A bunch of Kyoshi related stuff all happening over the course of a couple of like weeks, months. And then we're going to round off with some Diamond Select Toys Avatar news. And this is probably the biggest piece of news in the video. We finally have sort of pre-orders going up for Wave 2 of the action figures. And it's a big surprise here to find out that Wave 2 is only 2 figures. Azula and then Book 1 Aang. Now, we of course saw these before when they were revealed at the convention a month or 2 ago. And you know, there was some excitement for some of them, but the interesting thing here is, of course, that no sign of a Sokka or a Toph, because again, it was fairly unclear about which characters were in which wave. I think most people could figure out that, like, okay, the Book 3 Aang and Ozai are obviously in the same wave, and I think the way they were ordered roughly when we saw the picture of them all got across the idea that, okay, it probably is Book 1, Aang, Azula, and Toph in one wave, and then it's Sokka, Aang, and Ozai in the next wave. But now to find out that it's only 2 figures in the second wave, there's going to be some theories coming up because of this, because of course this means that potentially something has happened to either the Toph or the Sokka figure. If it was meant to be Toph, then the obvious reason here is that they've held back on her to improve the head sculpt, because it was very, very bad. It was so bad looking, the initial Toph head sculpt, just in terms of the size of it, and a lot of people were letting Diamond Select know that that's not good enough, and so maybe they've gone a little bit back to the drawing board in terms of doing some redesign work on the Toph, because I don't think anyone really expected them to just do a wave of 2 figures. You know, 3 felt like that's fine, that's sort of maybe a default amount. Maybe they'd go up to 4, but down to 2, it's actually a big surprise to see this, especially given that there's another Aang in here. And while it's Book 1 Aang, it's his sort of classic outfit. It's not exactly, I think, what people were sort of asking for. In that, yes, Azula is a fan favorite character, but I think Sokka and Toph were kind of like the big 2 from the 6 that we got announced that people really, really wanted more than anything else, especially the Toph. So does this mean Wave 3 is going to be 4 figures, or Was it actually some sort of a thing where like the Aang and the Ozai were actually meant to be some special set? I'm not sure, because they specifically did announce it, and I'll show you in a second that it was meant to be wave 2 and 3. But here's the description. There's not many pictures, which again seems to be a common thing with Diamond Select, of like they barely show you what you're getting. From Avatar: The Last Airbender, the second wave of the Select series includes 2 highly requested figures, Firebender Azula and Airbender Aang in his Season 1 outfit. Each figure includes a powerful bending effect piece, and Aang even includes his glider. Each figure features approximately 16 points of articulation, is sculpted in 7-inch scale, and is packaged in a full color window box with hang tag. And yeah, it's just the standard stuff, sculpted by the same guy. Box content: Azula comes with an effect piece, which we can see, and Aang comes with an effect piece and a glider. We don't actually get to see what Aang's effect piece is, as you can see in these pictures. It's just his glider. And Azula, of course, has her piece here, which actually looks quite good. I think there's some criticism still to be had if these are more finalized versions of the figures. Aang's neck looks extremely long here. I understand them needing to maybe do something a little bit different to get the sort of in motion sort of glider poses that they want. I kind of like the expression. It's one of those ones where like I still get the impression these are still relatively early shots of the figures, so it might look a little bit better in person. It definitely looks better than it did in the first pictures we saw of it, so that's an improvement. So I still like that there is a book 1 Aang, but like, you know, only a handful of figures in and we're already getting multiple Aangs, and leaving out other characters doesn't feel great. And with Azula, I think that there's again the same sort of criticism of like, why did they go for the like Sozin's Comet Azula with the sort of, you know, hair out of place, and not the sort of just standard Azula as we see her for most of the series? And that felt really unnecessary, to go for a sort of a specific Azula scene portrayal rather than just what she looks like most of the time. So I think they are making a couple of, like, I think mistakes here and not really listening to the fandom, and I don't think that's ever a particularly great thing. That's what Zen Monkey Studios seem to have done, of like just doing their own thing, and now there hasn't been a sign of a Korra or Avatar pin in months, so don't know what's going on with them. And I'm a little bit worried at this point about what's going on with Diamond Select, given that this is your wave 2. Like, I think a lot of people will definitely be questioning just like picking up the wave, like getting both figures. Like, people might just want to go for the Azula, and maybe they don't want the Aang because of the way it looks, or the fact that it is book 1 Aang and it's not something else. So I'm definitely getting a little bit worried with some of this stuff, in terms of like, they need to communicate about this. Like, why is this wave only 2 figures, and what's happened to some of the other things? Like, I want them to communicate a bit more about what it is, because again, they're finally saying what you get in each box, which was definitely something that was needed. But visually, they're not showing us it. Like it says here, what is Aang's effect piece? I don't know. But anyway, just to confirm this, Toy Wiz also have the exact same listing up, showing that there is only 2 figures in Wave 2. And basically, there's a slight difference between them. They're saying August, Big Bad Toy Store is saying September. So it gives you a release window for these figures for sure. So yeah, that's that. And then we'll just go on and have a look at the figures that were revealed at New York Toy Fair. Like, obviously we got this Avatar State Aang. There's the Azula, of course, with the effect part. That looks like exactly the figure we're getting, basically. There's the Toph beside her, which obviously everyone was very critical of because of the size of her head, which was very, very big, especially in some of the other pictures we've seen. It was a bit much. The Aang there, of course, everyone was a bit worried about, like, oh, what's going on? Is the mouth a bit too wide open? They seem to have slightly fixed that a bit. But again, what's the effect part? Like, does this Aang come with Momo? Does it come with the kind of non-splayed out glider? Does he come with that other version of the kind of shawl thing that he kind of wears? We don't know. And then what's happening with Walgreens exclusive versions? Are there Walgreens exclusive versions? The thing to say about that is that the ones that are listed here in Big Bad Toy Store are not the Walgreens versions. These are the retail versions. And what they're showing there is what you will get. I don't think we've seen if there is a Walgreens version or not. So that's that. There's the Sokka that I think was meant to be for Wave 3. And again, there was a lot of critique about the way his face looked. I still think it looks very, very weird. The rest of the sculpt looks fantastic. It's just the Sokka looks very, very odd in my opinion. Oddly, they don't have the picture of the Ozai here, but you know, it was obviously featured as part of the line. The Ozai actually was probably the best looking one of the figures that they announced. Okay, so a quick update here. While I was editing the video, I did find some extra information on the whole why is it two figures, where are the other figures situation. So someone did ask them basically, where's Toph? We need Toph and Sokka. We saw them at Toy Fair. When will they be out? And they just say, as you can see here, Diamond Select Toys, the official page for them, say Series 3 and 4. Now, that is a direct contradiction of what they said at New York Toy Fair when they revealed what all of these figures looked like, the 6 figures that we saw. They said it was waves 2 and 3. So clearly, at some point between Toy Fair and now, like the last 2 months, they've made the decision to turn either those 2 waves into 3, or those 2 waves into 3, and there's figures that we don't know about yet. I think either way, they've maybe made some weird choices with regards to what characters they've chosen to put where. I think it is kind of interesting that they have decided to put maybe the 2 figures that were like some of the least criticized out first, and then the 2 figures that were probably the most criticized, Toph and Sokka, there's no sign of them just yet. And so that's maybe a sign of why they've pushed into Wave 4, because they do need to maybe redo some stuff on Toph and Sokka. That's the only, I think, real positive to maybe take from this, is that now that they're pushing into Wave 4, it maybe does give them that time to maybe do a redo of them, so it will work out better. But I will say this is not a good look for them. They have already, I think, been very heavily criticized by myself and others for just like the lack of information, being super unclear about exclusives versus not exclusives, saying they come with all the accessories, but oh no, they don't come with the exclusive accessories. And now you're confusing people between initial reveal and now when the pre-orders are going up, and you're basically saying that like, oh yeah, Wave 4. What? You said those were part of Wave 2 and 3. It's confusing. It's a bad look. I hope they can get on track and improve their communication with the fan base, because they definitely need to do that. But yeah, back to the rest of the video. And then the only other thing I'll say is just that this was also announced. I was meant to sort of talk about it a little bit more earlier on, but I completely forgot about it very shortly after finding out it existed. So there is another Walgreens Avatar figure, and it is the Wave 1 Aang, but in completely clear plastic, that they're calling Avatar State Aang. It's definitely fine. It's one of those cool kind of collector type things, but again, it's exclusive to Walgreens. That shop doesn't exist in most countries, so it's a bit tricky to get for most people. And again, this was maybe one of the flaws with the original Avatar toy line, was them doing clear molds of a lot of characters when they didn't need to. But you know, hopefully this company doesn't fall into the same trap. But like I said, it's not looking particularly great so far. Like, I find it very difficult to be particularly excited about this announcement for Wave 2, given that it seems like a figure is just missing from this wave, and then there's kind of some issues with both figures here, of choosing to be so specific with Azula's design, and then Aang's neck and maybe some of the way his face looking not quite so great. Thankfully though, huge accessory. The full splayed out glider is a fantastic accessory, and you can always like put that with the other Aang or whatever. But we'll see what happens for sure. Because the tease, of course, I think from these pictures here was that it seems like the Avatar State Aang comes with the season 3 glider, but we'll have to wait and see on that exactly. So yeah, in the comments let me know what your thoughts are on stuff like the art book reprints, the exclusive version of The Shadow of Kyoshi, the 2 audiobooks for the both Kyoshi novels, and especially what your thoughts are on the odd reveal here of what is actually in Wave 2 of the Avatar figures. I really want to know what your guys' thoughts on that, because I see this as like a pretty major negative, and it makes me really question what's going on with them. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.